Our speaker for our class tonight, as you've already heard, is Brother Bradley Puckett. I actually got to know Bradley quite a few years ago whenever he was overseas. We began an email correspondence, and I learned about his situation, at least some of the details of his situation, and I'm very thankful that he was able to do what he was able to do over there. He represented us well. But while he was there, he was in harm's way frequently, and he had a serious job in a dangerous place around some folks that didn't care too much for him being in their country. And I really gained through those emails and then conversations with him after he returned, I gained an even greater appreciation for him and for what he went through and for what his wife went through in that time of separation, and the rest of his family and those that loved him, and the prayers that were lifted up on his behalf and the prayers that were answered on his behalf. But he's somebody that we can look up to, not as someone who's perfect, but as someone who has put his life on the line for us, and I'm grateful to him. I'm grateful to others like him that did not get to come home. So we're thankful that he's home, been home for a long time now, and we're thankful that he's able to be here tonight and share some material with us. And then, as time permits, at the end, this is a class, and so if you have some questions that you'd like for Bradley to try to answer, he'll be happy to do that. He said no math or biology questions, though. He's not real strong in that, but some other areas he might can help us with. Bradley, love you. Glad you're here tonight.
Evening. First off, I want to thank Jeff and Paul and Bart and the elders for the opportunity to come and speak tonight. Appreciate the rousing introduction from Jeff and the email he sent out yesterday, which I'm not sure I can live up to all the hype, but I do appreciate it, Jeff. If you ever doubt, we have a wonderful support group in our Christian brothers and sisters, Living Proof. I made it home because of the support group I had back home. And so never doubt that that's the greatest rock you can lean upon is your Christian brothers and sisters and your family. Paul was teaching the class on Islam, and he and I got to kick it around the idea one Wednesday night about doing a separate class, kind of a caveat to his, on radical Islam. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. My background is in Intel, so I was frequently in contact with all facets of the Muslim religion. Sunni, Shia, Kurds are primarily the three sectarian areas that I was able to work with. But I met some really great Muslims, and I met some really horrible ones, and pretty much saw the gambit of what that religion has to offer, from the good, the bad, and the ugly. So it's kind of what I want to do tonight, is talk a little bit about radical Islam, and then contrast it just for a little bit with, the honest to goodness, true believing Muslims who, have the potential to turn that part of the world around. Next slide for me, Mike. First off, a disclaimer, go back one. I am not an anti-Muslim, or I'm not anti-Muslim, okay? This is not an anti-Muslim lecture. I met some wonderful people who happen to practice the Muslim faith. Do I agree with their religion? No, of course not. I'm a Christian, and their beliefs are, 180 degrees in a lot of ways from ours, but a lot of ways they're similar. So as far as core beliefs and, telling the truth, thou shalt not kill, stuff like that, we all believe the same thing. But this is not an anti-Muslim class. I am, however, anti-radical Muslim. The radical Muslims are who is causing the problem in the Middle East and across the world. Next slide, please. Muslims in the world. There are 1.8 billion estimated Muslims in the world today. 10% of those are what we would describe as radical Muslims. They hold the radical belief and the radical interpretation of the Quran. 1% of that 182 million comes out to 1.8 million. And so you didn't think I was good at math. But the 1.8 million are actual extremist fighters. So of the 1.8 billion Muslims in the world, we have 1.8 million of them are actually causing all the problems. Those are the ones that have actually taken up arms in the religious struggle against the West as they've come to know it. These guys are extremely dedicated, determined, and detrimental. Dedicated to their cause, determined to conquer the world for Allah, and detrimental to world peace and regional stability in the Middle East. That's one of the things that you can at least respect about them as an adversary. Just to jump into soldier warrior mode for a second, is they are dedicated to their cause. Right, wrong, or indifferent, they will give everything in support of what they believe. Next, please. The origins of all of this hatred really comes from their interpretation of the Quran. It's rooted deeply in their religious beliefs. Just like Christians have various ways we interpret God's word, they have the same thing. However, the radical views go so far one direction, it turns into violence. Most of it is centered around a religious jihad. Jihad, literally translated, means struggle or the struggle or my struggle. All right, it's a struggle. If you ask most religious scholars, especially of the Muslim faith, they will tell you it means a struggle within yourself. All right, it also goes into struggle against persecution, struggle against yourself, struggle against non-Muslims, and enemies of Islam. The enemies of Islam, they consider anybody not of the Muslim faith. Now, it's how they take up this struggle is what makes the difference between, Allah-fearing, for lack of a better term, Muslims and the radical Muslims. It's how they define the word jihad. The radical Muslims will define it as taking up arms. We will conquer the world for Allah, not through evangelism or not through, sending missionaries out. We will take over the world for Allah through armed conflict and cause as much problems for those not of the Muslim faith as we can to try to somehow bring them into the fold of Islam. Next, please. All right. This is a quick video. We're going to watch about 5 minutes of it. A group of independent filmmakers made this film. I actually teach an anti-terrorism class for the Department of Homeland Security, and we show the entire 25 minutes of video in this class. We're going to watch about 5 minutes of it, and it's got a little warning, graphic content disclaimer at the beginning, but it's not too bad. It's a lot of the aftermath of bombings and stuff like that. And then let's watch that real quick, and then we'll jump right back into the lecture.
the American walks every day, normal, going to work. He's walking downtown in Manhattan, and all of a sudden, two planes hit the Twin Towers, and they have no clue why would somebody do such a thing.
The deliberate and deadly attacks which were carried out yesterday against our country were more than acts of terror. They were acts of war.
Radical Islam has declared the war. Radical Islam is at war now with the West.
When I saw the second airplane hit, I knew jihad has come to America.
What happened in Bali and in Istanbul and now in Madrid are close to home for all of us. The tentacles of terrorism are reaching out to every corner of the world.
London's worst attack since the Second World War, a series of blasts rocked the capital during the busy morning rush hour. A shocking toll of dead and injured, dozens are described as in a critical condition. Beslan School Number 1 is a scene of carnage tonight. Hundreds of children are feared dead.
Они будут видеть наши зрители. Пусть Россия ждет наши зрители, пусть они ждут на их города, везде будут ждать наши зрители. Мы конкретно будем работать.
Every single country in the world is dealing with this on one level or another. You see that the Thais are dealing with it. You see that the Filipinos are dealing with it. The Europeans are dealing with it in Madrid. The Russians are dealing with it in Chechnya. The British are dealing with it in London and in Manchester. And of course, you see in the Middle East, whether it's in Iraq, in Iran, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Egypt, and of course in Israel and Saudi Arabia.
That's good, Mike.
And you go to Africa.
Cut me off for a second. All right, I told him to stop it there. I want to talk to you for a second about Beslan, Russia. September 2004, there are the stats. 50 terrorists entered a primary school in Beslan. These terrorists, there's a lot of speculation on where they came from. They were primarily made up of Chechen rebels, Chechen Muslims, a very extremist group in and around Russia. They took over the school and seized 1,200 hostages, mostly women and young children. Imagine, if you will, taking your kid to school on the first day of school. Beslan was about the size of Muscle Shoals as far as city size. By no means as modernized as our city. It's an agricultural city. It's about comparable in population only and the climate. So first day of school, it's usually pretty warm. Their schools have no air conditioning. So when these 50 terrorists took over the school, most of the women bringing their children to school for the first day were in a courtyard. They kind of herded and corralled them all into the gymnasium. Now, pack 1,200 hostages into a gymnasium on the first day of school in North Alabama. That's the conditions these people were under for 53 hours. No restroom breaks, no facilities, nothing to eat, nothing to drink. It was pretty much horrific for these people trapped inside that gymnasium. The terrorists that took it over used the larger boys as forced labor, forced them to help them fortify their positions, and then executed them. The rest were just left to swelter in the gymnasium. 300 Spetsnaz is what the Russians sent to deal with this problem. I bring this up in my police classes because Spetsnaz is the Russian Special Forces. If this happens on American soil, it will be the police that have to deal with it. The Posse Comitatus Act says that the United States military cannot operate on American soil. So this will be our cross to bear as a police force. So that's an "Are you prepared" moment for my law enforcement brethren. But that's what the Russians were able to send to deal with these 50 terrorists who had fortified this entire school with explosives, with mortars, with heavy machine guns. As the Russians were moving into place, one of the terrorists, it's not sure how, accidentally sparked off an explosion. Okay, that killed a whole bunch of people inside that gymnasium. And the Spetsnaz thought they were compromised, so the firefight began. The firefight lasted for 10 hours, 10-hour assault. These guys were fighting not just, they were fighting within a room. Okay, heavy machine guns going in a room probably the size of one of our classrooms back in the back. This was horrific on all levels for the innocents involved, for the Spetsnaz sent to deal with it. 339 casualties came out of it, mostly, again, women and children. Never underestimate the resolve of these people. They cannot be bargained with. They have no mercy. Unless it supports their cause, they want nothing to do with it. Okay, Beslan haunts my dreams because of the 17 that escaped. That knowledge is out there in those 17 terrorists. The knowledge of how this was carried out, the planning, the preparation. We have found our training materials in the caves of Afghanistan, our active shooter documents that we use to combat school shootings. We found videos of them training in schools. Okay, it pays to be prepared on our side, but this shows the resolve of the extremist element of the Muslim faith. They have no mercy on anybody, women, children, it doesn't matter. If it helps them further their cause, that's the only thing they're concerned about. But like I said, the 17 just blended back into the population. Osama bin Laden called it the perfect day. It was not linked to Al-Qaeda, but he did, release a video on it and called it the perfect day. This is what he wanted to see happen in America. So this is what we're dealing with. This is the reality of the extreme Muslim belief and the lengths they're willing to go to further their cause. What was the end result? What was the end state that they desired? Nothing but to gridlock Russia, just to disrupt their economy, their way of life. But that's the lengths they're willing to go to. Next, please. Mumbai, India. Okay, 10 terrorists came ashore in a hijacked fishing trawler. Mumbai is about 14 million people, huge city. 10 terrorists gridlocked it for about 48 hours, killed 179 people. All they did was go into shopping malls and they're equivalent to Walmart's and open fire. Now, Mumbai is very, very far behind us in technology, in counterterrorism, in policing, in pretty much every facet you can look at. But end goal was to gridlock the country, and that's what they did. All right, they gridlocked an entire country with 10 people in one city. The lengths that they'll go to. Never underestimate it. Never deny that they are willing to give everything they've got to further their cause. Next, please. Next slide. There we go. My personal observations. When I saw what I noticed about the radical Muslims that I dealt with in Iraq. Like I said, this was Sunni, this was Shia, all different various extremist groups within that terrorist organizations. I dealt with Al-Qaeda, I dealt with Ansar al-Sunnah, Tawhid al-Jihad, you name a funny name, I've probably dealt with them at one time or another. And they're very hypocritical, okay, in their religious beliefs. They do all of this extremely cruel, violent, horrible acts in the name of their religion. However, they drug and alcohol abuse, rampant among these terrorist organizations. Homosexuality runs rampant through their terrorist organizations. Promiscuity with men and with women runs rampant through these organizations. The abuse of their women, even beyond the cultural norms. Okay, you know, the Muslim faith is abusive to women according to our beliefs. However, they take it an even further step in abusing their women. And the sectarian violence, and that's Sunnis fighting Shias, Shias fighting Kurds, Kurds fighting them both. They're responsible for most all of this in a religion that preaches a whole lot of peace when you look at it in its grassroots form. Next, please. The key points with the bad guys: they cannot be negotiated with. Okay, there's nothing you can do that will compromise, that will make them compromise. It's their way or no way. They will not surrender. Personal experience, they will fight you to the last man, to the last bullet, and start throwing rocks after that. Okay, they will give everything up and to include their lives in support of their beliefs. Their hatred toward the West is rooted in their religious interpretation, which makes them that much more dangerous. That's where this diehard belief comes from, is they feel that they're doing God's will. And just as if you've got that aimed in the right direction, aimed in the wrong direction, that's equally as powerful. And they will not stop. There's going to be, you know, this is something we're going to have to deal with until, you know, probably the end of time. You know, it's not necessarily a new phenomenon. People, you know, like to ask a lot, why is this something we're just now dealing with? And it's something that's always been there. It's just now made it across the pond. It's crossing oceans now. It's crossing boundaries that it previously couldn't cross. And like I said, it's going to be a worldwide problem for, you know, until Jesus comes and takes us all home. So it's just something we're going to have to deal with. Next, please. All right, the mainstream Muslims is what I'm calling the good guys, the good Muslims, okay? Very peaceful, very respectful. You know, they're the ones that would come up to us on the street and thank us for saving their country or, you know, helping feed their children. They're very appreciative for what we do for them, how we give aid to their countries, how we send troops into harm's way to help provide freedoms for them. They're very faithful, but their priorities are different. They're faithful first to their religion, to their sect, to their tribe, then to their spouse, then to their country. So you see, you know, their country falls at the end, so it's very hard to get them to go against anything else to help their nation. When you're trying to build a nation from nothing, that presents a problem for us with our Western way of thinking. You know, if it goes against their sect or their tribe, they're not going to help their country. So one of the problems we ran into is we're looking at it with, you know, our Western eyes, our, you know, God, family, country, and then they have several levels between God and country. And we have to cross all of those hurdles before we can get them to support their nation. And they're very patriotic. It does fall at the end of the spectrum, but they are very proud of their heritage, of their nation, and will do what they can to help you as long as it falls in line with the other areas of their life. Next, please. And the key points to the good guys. They're the key. They hold all the keys to stabilizing that part of the world, ending the sectarian violence, ending the aggression against the West, establishing legitimacy for their political, economical, and spiritual causes. Okay? If the Middle East right now is primarily known for terrorism, if you ask anybody in the West, and therefore that's going to hinder them politically, economically, any way they can make their way forward in the world scene, they're going to be hindered until the legitimate Muslims can take some control back from these extremists and put them on the road they need to be traveling on. Next, please. Cultural differences. I kind of hit on this just a second ago. This was a problem we ran into when we were trying to nation build over there and win the hearts and minds, is our misunderstanding of several different things. One of the Muslim faith, that should be tribal loyalty, and they're family oriented. We got all of this wrong initially when we went over there. And the perfect example, I call it the soccer field, or I'm sorry, the soccer field analogy. We were building soccer fields and little primary schools for little girls right and left. But the average Iraqi, and by that I mean, Iraqi Muslim, really does not care whether or not their kids have a place to play soccer, nor whether their daughters are educated. It made an excellent soundbite on CNN to show to the West, with our Western eyes, all these little girls that can now go to school. But we're not trying to win over the hearts and minds here. We were trying to win over the hearts and minds over there, and daughters fall at the very end of their priority scale. We finally started getting it right when we realized we can't think like we think to help these people out and get them to help us. We had to switch everything around and then go to the father and ask him, are your sons working? Are they in school? And start our priorities where their priorities were. Then we started making some headway, especially in the Anbar province out west with the Sunnis. And that got to the point where the Sunnis actually took up arms against Al-Qaeda and routed them completely out of the Anbar province. So we started figuring it out, but we lost a lot of good men and spent a lot of dollars and a lot of bullets trying to do that, and when really we just needed to read a book or two. I think we could have figured that out. And like I said, all of those cause cultural roadblocks to regional operations. And bottom line is that we can't look at them the way we look at things. We can't look at their lives the way we look at ours. It's completely backwards. Next slide, please. All right, went through that kind of quick. It was like drinking from a fire hose, is what I like to tell a lot of the guys I teach. But Jeff said to make sure I left time for questions. I didn't leave as much as I wanted, but I'll open it up. Any questions? Yes. Yes. We don't. They're undocumented. We don't know who those 17 were. We only captured one, so even if he spilled everything he knew, he probably didn't know much. Those 17 are probably, anywhere in the world right now. We don't know. And that's, just one of the realities we live with. The FBI is doing an excellent job with kind of squashing a bunch of this stuff before it really gets started. But, I hate to say it, but it's a matter of time. Everybody watched the news today with the buildings collapse in New York. Okay, they're saying that was, a natural gas explosion, but what was the first thing crossed my mind? Probably the same thing that crossed a lot of your minds, especially being in New York City. Hand? Yes, sir.
Do you have any idea how many rabid Muslims are in our country now?
No, sir. I don't think there's any way to figure on that one. Yes, by all means, they're here. That's really not even a thing. I know they're here. But the way they set themselves up, kind of ingenious on their parts in the sleeper cells. And that's the thing, is they don't know how many of them are here. And that's what keeps them safe from capture, is they're very autonomous. Me and Jeff might have a little sleeper cell over here, and Blanda's got one over there, and we don't know each other exist. And that's what keeps them safe and keeps them off the radar. And even if Jeff and I get caught, we don't know about Blanda to give her up. So yes, they're here. By all means, they're here. but there's no way to guesstimate numbers. Yes, sir.
The situation with regard to Russia and India,
Mm-hmm.
that's my education. I was so naive. I think of the fact that they're against the West. Why Russia and India?
The Chechnyan rebels have their own beef with the Russians. I really couldn't speak intelligently on what sparked that. Probably the same thing. They view, socialism kind of the way Al Qaeda views capitalism. They're not Muslims, so therefore they're the enemy. Anything that's not Muslim is an enemy of Islam, and they'll take up arms against it. The guys in Mumbai, their goal was to surpass Al Qaeda. They wanted to be the big kid on the block, and that was their stated goal when they were captured. The ones that were captured was, we wanted to put something together to eclipse Al Qaeda. We wanted to be the biggest kid on the block, terrorist speaking, and they came out with Mumbai. Mumbai was a soft target. Like I said, I've got a video on that shows interviews a couple of the policemen that were there, and this was 2003, I believe Mumbai was. And they're carrying M1 Garand bolt-action rifles. That's what their police force carried. I think there was 16 bullets between the 12 police officers, and only 3 of them had weapons. It was a soft target in a city of 14 million people. So, that was their motivation. So it varies from attack to attack. Anything else? Anybody else? I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am. I was there 04, 05, and then part of 06 and through 08. Part of 08. Came back New Year's Eve, 07, so no, I didn't get 08 in there. But I was there pretty much 4 years straight with a 9-month vacation at home. That's when I did exclusively in Iraq. I never got Afghanistan. Yes. Yeah, sure. You have to talk to Mr. Simpson. He's next.
Specifically, what areas of Iraq did you serve in?
Mm-hmm.
And if you know, what is the state of those particular areas today?
You did write those down, didn't you? The first time I was there, I was in the Anbar province, which is Ramadi and Fallujah, and that was primarily a Sunni-dominated area. The sheikh that brought all those Sunni tribes together and ousted the Al Qaeda, I actually got to have dinner with him about once a week, Sheikh Bazaya, and I like to think my unit and some of our guys, civil affairs guys, kind of laid the foundation for that. And Anbar's still looking pretty good as far as low terrorist population, but it's sparsely populated. You've got Fallujah and Ramadi and really open desert to the Iranian border. But, you noticed they retook Fallujah not long ago, which I was there for Operation Phantom Fury when we retook Fallujah in 2004, and that was a sad day for me when I realized they had retaken Fallujah. Second time I was in Baghdad, and Baghdad's going to be Baghdad. It was a Shia population we dealt with in eastern Baghdad. We were just outside of Sadr City, and Baghdad's got so many influences pulling it in so many different directions, and being the nation's capital, Baghdad's going to be in turmoil for decades. So Baghdad's pretty much the way it was when I left, in my opinion. One second, Mr. Simpson next. Yes. Yeah, we did what we called snatch and grabs. We would go out and raid the houses, snatch the targets up, and then bring them back. We did the interrogations. This was me and my team. We were a targeting team, and we did the interrogations, got the information, which hopefully led to another operation to go get another guy. So our operations would kind of piggyback off of another. We would roll out from one op, and we may come back 72 hours later, 6 ops, deep. We just played it by ear. Whether we got a target from one was whether we would hit another one. So yeah, direct contact, armed conflict, as well as sitting across the table from them. Yes. I was Army Intel. Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Brown. Of the world population of Muslims. If I could answer that one, I think I'd be in the White House. Either in the big office or a little one next door. Like I said, if we can figure that one out, we can figure the whole thing out. Yes, sir. I agree. I agree. No. That was me in the water swimming away. You can't see me. I'm behind the shark. Anything else real quick? All right, thank you.